We have our installation files for Joomla, WordPress, and Moodle uploaded and extracted in our server's directories. Next, we need to set up a MySQL database for each app, adjusting the root directory so your temporary URLs are working, and configure the right PHP version along with the custom PHP settings for each app. We're also going to be talking about the benefits and drawbacks to running your apps on separate accounts in SPanel or running multiple apps in the same account. So let's get started. Now that we've set up our hosting account, gained access to SPanel, configured our FTP client, and uploaded our installation files for our open source applications, we are now ready to create a database in preparation of installing our applications. The SQL database is really the core storage area for all the content of your site, including user accounts, site configurations, and a whole lot more. To create your database, you're going to go over into your SPanel and click on MySQL databases. For each one of your open source applications, you're going to need to create a database. And you will also need to create a user, although that database user can be shared across all of your databases, or you can have a user for each database. That's up to you. So let's go ahead and create a database by clicking on any one of these green buttons, and I'm going to select Create a Database. And you can see here that they've already filled out a prefix for your database, which is exactly the same as your user. If you were to create a new user with a different username, that will become the prefix for your database. So you need to go ahead and create a database name. And here we're going to create Joomla as our first database right there. You really can name this whatever you want, but you do need to remember what you called the database. So let's go ahead and submit. And there is your first database. Now I need to create a user for these databases. So let's go ahead and create a user and create a password. Now we want this user to only access the databases on this server, so we just leave the access type as is. So let's go ahead and click submit. The next thing that we need to do is assign this user that we just created to this database. So to do that, I'm going to go over here to the three dots and click here, Manage Users. So I have the option of being able to create a new user or to select the user that I've already created. So I'm going to click submit. All right, we are done setting up our database and our user. The three pieces of information that we need in order to install these applications is the database name, the database user, and the database password. And so we're going to need to put those in during the installation process. We're now going to take a moment and assign a domain name to our open source application. When we signed up for our hosting account, we did not have a domain name, and so we were assigned a temporary domain, which is totally fine. We don't actually need a domain name at this point while we're installing these applications, and we can get our domains assigned at a later step. So let's first go down to domains. Now this page is going to list all of your domain names and the directory that needs to be accessed for those domain names. So right now it's set up to go to public HTML, but if you remember, we put a directory inside the public HTML folder that is for our open source application, and we put all of our installation files in that folder. So what we need to do is we need to point this document root URL to that directory. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and click on Actions here and select the settings. Then I can click Browse and find the Joomla directory that we created and click Save. Now when people access this URL, they are going to be accessing this directory. Now that we've set up our SQL database for our open source app and a user for that database, and we've correctly pathed the document root for our URL, we are now ready to adjust the PHP version and settings for our open source application. So to do that, I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to scroll down here to PHP Manager. On this page, it's going to list all of the domain names that we've set up for our account and which PHP versions are being used for those web applications that are assigned to those domains. We have the ability here to change the PHP version and also change the PHP settings so we get the exact settings that are needed for each one of these open source applications. Now, if you remember, I have this URL pointing to our Joomla directory, and this PHP version is not actually the optimal PHP version for Joomla. This is the PHP version that is the default setting for the server. So we're going to need to come in and change that. So to do that, I'm going to go over here to change PHP version, and I'm going to go down to PHP version 8.3, and then I'm going to click change. Now that that's using the right PHP version, we can come in and change the PHP settings. So click on PHP INI editor. All the PHP settings for our Joomla site are being controlled by a PHP INI file that's sitting on the server. This interface is just giving you an easy way of editing that file. Now there's two tabs here, the basic editor of the most common settings that you're going to need to adjust, and then the advanced editor where you can actually add custom lines to your PHP INI file. These basic settings are going to allow you to adjust things like how long you are allowing the server to run a script before it's terminated, how much memory you are allowing these scripts to allocate, and the max file size that you're going to allow to be uploaded to your website. Now I'm going to be inputting the values that are specific for Joomla because that's the account that we have selected is the one that we put the Joomla folder installation files on. And so we'll go ahead and do this same step for Moodle and WordPress. They have their own specific options that we'll put in here. But for right now, we're going to put in Joomla's. The max execution time for Joomla is going to be 300. The max input time is going to be 1,000. The max input vars is going to be 3,000. And we're going to keep the memory limit at 512 megabytes. The post max size, we're going to go ahead and make it 256 megabytes. If you should ever need to upload larger files to your site, then you can come back later and adjust these. We need to make a couple more changes, but we can't do it on the basic editor tab. We have to go to the advanced editor. What we're going to be adding here is a couple of lines. And we're going to be turning off the output buffering by saying output_buffering equals off. And we're also going to turn off the display errors. These are two settings that are recommended by Joomla to have turned off. So between our basic editor changes and our advanced editor changes, we're going to go down here and commit these changes. Now that we have the correct PHP version and settings for our account that has our Joomla installation files, let's go ahead and follow these same steps that we've done here in the PHP manager, but for WordPress and Moodle. So let's go ahead and go to our Moodle account, which is this one right here. So if we click on that, for our Moodle site, we're going to change the PHP version right here. We're going to go with PHP version 8.3. And then we're going to change our PHP INI file. The max execution time is going to be 600. The max input time is going to be 200. The max input vars, we're going to go ahead and make that 5,000. We're going to keep that at 512 megabytes. That'll just give us a little bit of room. And then for our upload size, we're going to go ahead and make that 512 megs. Because sometimes we upload really large courses back into Moodle, so we're going to need a little extra size. So that's all the changes that we need to make for Moodle. So let's go ahead and commit that change. So lastly, let's go ahead and do that for WordPress. So let's grab this one right here. This is where we have our WordPress installation files put, is on that account. So for WordPress, we're going to go in here and change our PHP version to PHP version 8.3. We're going to commit that change. Then we're going to come in and change our PHP INI settings. We're going to go ahead and change this to 120 for our max execution time and do another 120 for the max input time. We're going to set this to 3,000 for the max input vars. And then we're going to change this to 256 megabytes. And let's go ahead and make this 128 right here for both of these upload sizes. Okay, so let's go ahead and commit that change. I do want to mention here that there is a newer PHP version that's being offered by Scala Hosting, but I'm currently not choosing the most updated version for the PHP, and that's because I want to make sure that I'm maximizing the compatibility of my open source software with third-party extensions and plugins. Even though your base open source app says that it can use the highest PHP version, all of your extensions and plugins that are doing the heavy lifting on your site may not. There are some trade-offs though. The latest version of PHP is going to be the most secure and most optimized. Once you set up your website with all of the plugins and extensions that you need, it would be a good idea to come back and adjust the PHP version to see if you can actually go with the highest version and it not break your site. Also, I want to say here that I've been a bit generous on the PHP settings, which I feel like I can do because we have some pretty good resources with the Scala hosting plan. I would say that you don't really want to go any higher than any of the settings that we've used for our 3 open source apps. Obviously, if you go too low, then your site's not going to function. But if you go too high, then you could introduce some security risks. Like if you had a malicious script, you're giving it a lot of resources to do damage. And actually, your site may not run as efficiently because you're giving these scripts too much time and memory to execute, which doesn't leave enough resources for other scripts. Because we have 3 different open source applications and we're hosting them inside of different accounts, I do want to let you know that the steps that we went through for the account that has our Joomla installation, I've gone back through and followed all the exact same steps for our WordPress and Moodle site. All the steps are exactly the same. You just change out Moodle or WordPress instead of Joomla when setting up your databases and assigning your domains to your application directory. Now that we've made directories inside of our public HTML folders, uploaded and extracted our installation files, each in their own separate accounts, created databases for each app, and adjusted the PHP version and settings. Now I want to show you how to host several apps inside of one account. Up until this point, each app has gotten its own account inside your ScalaHosting SPanel plan. Like we discussed, this is great for increased security if you want to keep the content totally segregated, but for simplicity of management, and if you have a stack of open apps that are all working together, then you're going to want to have all those hosted in the same account. The first thing that I want to show you is the file manager. I'm in the account that I was using to put the Moodle installation files into. So I had a Moodle directory already in there, and I've added in a WordPress in Joomla. And so you would put the installation files and extract them in those folders. But now you have 3 different apps inside of one storage area for this single account. Next, I want to show you the MySQL databases. So I had this Moodle one in here from before, so I went ahead and created a WordPress and Joomla database. When it comes to creating users for your database, you have 2 different options. You can create a user per database. That's going to give you more security. Or for ease of use, you can create one user and assign them to all of your databases. And you can see here that I've created a new open app user and I've assigned that user to all of these databases. So if you've added a bunch of domains to your hosting account and they're all pointing to your hosting provider, they're all going to be listed here. And for each one of those, you can assign a document root that's pointing to a specific open source application. Or what you can do is you can set up one of your open source applications for this main domain name. And you can do that by pathing it to the correct document root. I've done that for Joomla. And then you can create subdomains for your other open source applications. So to do that, you need to go over to the subdomain page. And from here, you're going to create a new subdomain. So this is our temporary domain. You're going to add a prefix to this domain, which makes it a subdomain. So I'm going to go ahead and add in Moodle here. Right here, it's automatically trying to find this directory, which is incorrect. You need to go over here to Browse. and select the correct directory. It's in the public HTML folder, and select that as Moodle. So from here, you get to actually pick which PHP version that you're going to be using. So we had specified Moodle as needing PHP version 8.3. So let's go ahead and add that as a subdomain. So let's go ahead and create another one here for WordPress. All right, so we have all three of our open source applications. We have one set as the main domain, and then we have two subdomains set up. So the last thing I want to show you is the PHP manager and how they split up the different domains or subdomains. Right now we have one main domain and two subdomains. If you had multiple domains, they would all be listed here, but this gives you the ability to control the PHP version and the PHP settings separately for each domain or subdomain.